Before we begin, I'd like to give a heartfelt thank you to all my patrons. David Joseph Moody. That's it. The Solved Unsolved Mysteries podcast is an audio and video podcast show thing where I record myself watching an episode of the TV show Unsolved Mysteries while drinking and alcohols, and then react to it, and then I take notes and research the stories in the episode, give extra details for these stories and updates if they exist. Then write a script out and read that script to you with moody synth music and audio and or video clips from things to create a fun and chill environment where we make fun of style choices of the late 1980s and early 90s, while trying to be cool with the unwanted, intrusive thoughts about our own impending doom and learning about the history of crime and weird topics in America from the time period just after the movie Aliens, but slightly before the movie Aliens vs. Predator. I started this podcast as an experiment in fall of 2017, and I think it's fun and interesting, but I'm the kind of person who builds scale models and repairs cassette decks as a hobby. I also make bad jokes that even I don't like and cut most of them out. I explain the stories and summarize the show enough that you probably don't need to actually watch it before listening, but it's also a good idea that you do that to fully understand the context of all the things happening and to support the official release of the show Unsolved Mysteries. I try to view the stories through a skeptical lens and try not to talk about my own super smart big brain theories about these crimes because I have some level of self-awareness and recognize that I am an idiot. Let's go into it, penis. Welcome to the Solved Unsolved Mysteries podcast, episode 5. This episode is covering season 1, episode 2 of Unsolved Mysteries. The show is also now, currently anyway, on YouTube. Hey, how are you? Are you well? Well, I'm feeling pretty good since... Actually, I feel like shit, but this is probably where the ad would go if this podcast had ad sponsors. It doesn't. Patreon. Today on the podcast, we have 4 unspooky, not very mysterious stories. Perhaps we should call this one Solved Mysteries. Story 1. Wanted. For the robbery and murder of Elmer DeBoer, a gas station money courier, in 1986. Story 2. Final Appeal. What the hell is Final Appeal? I don't know, this is the first time I've seen one of these. A 1979 gas station robber, a different gas station robbery story than the last one. Anyway, the robber says he's not a robber, and it's a weird misunderstanding where there are witnesses on both sides. Fun in a not fun way. Story 3. Unexplained death. A teenage boy's body is found by the shoreline, but what was his cause of death? Was it Satan? Was it some sort of nerd murder or nerder? Or was it something that had nothing to do with any of that stuff? Story 4. Lost Loves, Lost Letters. World War II's V-mail system somehow misplaced 235 unopened letters from soldiers to their loved ones. Somehow they ended up in Aunt Harriet's attic in 1986. History. References. Oh, and no ghosts again. Sorry, everybody. No apologia before we start this episode. Let's just go ahead and jump into Story 1. Wanted. I'm drinking Nika Black with Coke again because this is the same recording session and my ice tastes weird. Oh, we're starting. May 11th, 1987. Police are called to a gas station, but it's completely empty. They found an open safe, open door, and no employees. 2 people are missing. The assistant manager, Missy, is missing. Also missing is the money courier, Elmer. Melissa Munday, 16 years old, was the assistant manager present on the day. And Elmer DeBoer, age 38, was carrying around $10,000 on his person while making the final cash pickup. The next day, a body was found in the woods with 2 bullet wounds in the back of the head. It was Elmer. Robert Stack says what happened was a bizarre story of love and violence in rural America. I can't really do a good Robert Stack impression. Also, look at Actor Cop's cross-draw holster. That's going to drive me nuts. Guys, you're not riding a fucking horse. 1985. Hancock, Maryland. Oh, hey, a Z28 Camaro. My parents had one. Just look at that. Very cool and very neat. Missy was a good student and made the honor roll. Missy was a shy person who was involved in many school activities but didn't seem to do anything in between school and home. Oh my God, I actually wrote shul between shul and home. Her mom says she always knew where she was. Missy'd call and ask for a ride when she was done with her activities. Nobody had any idea that she would ever act out in any way. Until now. Until over 30 years ago. I assume you have a sense of time and space. Enter the dickwad. Jerry Strickland, a stranger, arrives in town in his aforementioned sweet Camaro. He supposedly is looking for a plot of land to purchase in order to, definitely really, and this is not a scam, make an orphanage. Make an orphanage. What? I don't want to spoil this too much, but that's a bunch of horseshit. Jerry asks Missy's family about a neighboring house. Like, who owns it? Is it for sale? Stupid questions about his fake plan that didn't exist. Missy's mom recalls thinking he was, quote, smooth-talking and, quote, demanding, and that she didn't really like his attitude so much. Missy, however, became very interested in Jerry. He would return to the house several more times. According to her buddy Susie Walls, each time he'd bring along a little gift for Missy, like an adult man trying to, I don't want to say groom, let's say a non-adult person. Tammy Sipes, another of Missy's friends, says that Missy was lying to her mother about being with Jerry. She would say she was studying or hanging out with friends, but really she was on what had to be terrible dates with an adult dullard. Jerry and Missy would begin sneaking off pretty regularly. And as all these dillshits do, Jerry would tell Missy a sad, sobby sob story about his tragic past that's not real. A wife and child taken away suddenly in a fatal car accident, tearing his life away, leaving him alone and despondent with only his tiny penis. At some point, Missy's mom noticed her wearing a ring. She said she bought the ring as a souvenir for herself. A souvenir for what? I have no fucking idea. Maybe it was from the statutory rape gift shop. Maybe that's not an okay joke to make. But obviously, it was a lie. Jerry gave it to her. Mom was pretty upset because until this point, Missy was very squared and straight-edged, and to her knowledge, she never lied to her before. And also, she was 15 years old. Oh, sheets. April 16th, 1986. Missy leaves home to catch the school bus. That was the last time her mother saw her. Instead of getting on the school bus, she dropped herself into the incredibly low and awkward passenger seat of a third-generation Chevrolet Camaro and left the state of Maryland behind, in a cloud of probably leaded gasoline exhaust and definitely menthol cigarette smoke. It is at this point Robert stacks facts on us. Have I used that one yet? Maybe not. Jerry's dead wife and kids are, gasp, not even a little dead. What the fuck is happening? And he's been surviving day to day on check fraud. And that old Jer has been to prison for raping his goddamn previous sister-in-law and cutting her fucking throat and leaving her for dead. The good news, though, is that she didn't die. Thankfully, him being a fuck-up also resulted in him fucking that up. Jerry was charged with, quote, malicious assault instead of attempted murder. Is there a non-malicious assault? By the way, best mugshot I've ever seen. Sorry, audio folks, but pause and Google Jerry Strickland mugshot. This fucking photo, holy shit. This smirky ass fucking picture, oh my god. He looks like Peter Griffin from Family Guy's schlubbier, dumber cousin fell in a giant vat of Skippy peanut butter. Oh my god, he's a human pile of moist Bisquick and dog hair. The couple moved to the town of Springfield, Michigan, and Missy got pregnant, yuck, and they had a child. She never told her family where she was, which was living with a spoiled layer cake of sadness and mustache shaped like a human being named Jerry. Missy's friend, Sherry with an I, Nix, states that Missy was actually very unhappy back home in Maryland, and that is why she jumped in with Jerry so fast. Specifically, she said the only two people that Missy cared about were her grandfather and her older brother. I mean, ouch. She also added the detail that she never once witnessed the couple kiss or touch each other, yuck, or speak to one another ever. After having the baby and settling, and for Missy that's in more ways than one, she became the assistant manager at a local gas station. This is where they met Elmer DeBoer. Elmer worked for the oil company and basically transported cash for a living. The day of the crime, near the end of his route for the day, he stops in to take cash from the station's safe. It was the morning of May 11th. 1 hour later, we are back at the start of the episode. The show explains at this point the police have, quote, developed a theory that Jerry orchestrated this crime. No, honest and gentle Jerry? Jerry was like, I'm gonna steal this money in this fake ass mustache, dude. Dude, this looks so fake. Police surmise he handcuffed Missy and Elmer together at gunpoint, got the cash, around $10,000. Oh, or $22,500 in 2019 U.S. monies. The script was written in 2019. He likely did this to throw off the trail of Missy's involvement and to give the impression that Missy, too, would be killed in case Elmer didn't comply with Jerry's orders. So basically, he counted on Elmer being a good person and trying to keep Missy safe and used that against him. If you had any doubts that Jerry Strickland isn't a trash bag filled with truck stop hot dogs and violence, I hope that those are laid to rest. This is comic book villain level evil bullshit. This whole evil plan did make sense though, as it was apparently Jerry's goal to quickly and quietly move Missy and Elmer to a hidden location. One where he could execute Elmer without witnesses. Surprised he didn't wear an obviously fake mustache like the actor portraying him right now in the show. Look at this shit. What is this, sleepaway camp? Audio listeners, watch the movie Sleepaway Camp. In the second part of the movie, the guy that plays the cops wore a fake mustache because he shaved his mustache and he had to do reshoots. It's pretty funny. The next morning, the couple are seen buying a blue pickup truck with small bills. They stop to chat with the salesman at Lucky Auto Sales, or just Missy did anyway, for 2.5 goddamn hours while Jerry did God knows what. Murdering kittens, slapping candy out of babies' hands, leaving fake 1 stars on Yelp, whatever made his dick move that day. Missy sat there and joked around less than 24 hours after a buddy's skull got blown apart by her bubba Jerry. People in the show debate Missy's guilt and state of mind at the time. How could a sweet girl, by all accounts, become this much of a dick? Nobody can understand it. The show ends by giving her description. Jerry is now 26 years old, in 1987, meaning he was 24 or 25 when he started dating a girl of about 15 years old. Like he's some kind of Mormon. Is that offensive? Substitute whatever religion you like. You're all guilty at some point. I'm edgy. I'm edgy. I've been yelling at children all day because that's my job now. Yeah, Jerry is 26-year-old now, then. 5'11" and 250 pounds of raw cookie dough that fell on the floor and got crumbs from breakfast stuck in it. And he has a scar on his forehead from when a sheep rejected his sexual advances. They are both wanted. Update. Moses Lake, Washington. The desert oasis. Immediately after the initial broadcast of this episode of Unsolved Mysteries, Jerry was recognized by at least 20 viewers who immediately called police. They were found at a friend's house, waiting for said police. They had also seen the show and realized that they were fucked. Sergeant Dennis Duke on scene states that they were calm, collected, and that Jerry just said, "I'm the guy you're looking for." Detective Sergeant Donald G. Bailey from the Waterford, Michigan PD, what's with all the water names, says it was 7 hours and 15 minutes from the UM broadcast to Jerry and Missy being in police custody.
He doesn't seem all that bothered by the fact that he shot an innocent man in the back of the head twice.
They were taken back to Michigan for trial. Jerry maintained his smug yet buttery innocence.
They got circumstantial evidence, all hearsay. It's people talking, no witnesses. I mean, okay? That's why, I say they're going to learn that we didn't do this. All they want is a conviction, and they don't care if they burn me or not.
I swear to God, he says they have circumstantial evidence.
They got circumstantial evidence.
One more time.
They got circumstantial evidence.
Circumstantive evidence? Still fucking stupid. You're fucking stupid.
Why, Jerry? Why?
Update to update. Total comedy editing by Unsolved Mysteries here. Despite mostly circumstantive evidence, Jerry Strickland Propane was convicted, sentenced to 2 life sentences with no possibility of parole. Missy pled guilty to the robbery part, 1 count, and spent a mere 7 months in a juvenile detention. Keep in mind, she's 17 years old at this point. She met him when she was 15. She exchanged testimony against Jerry Dickheimer in order to get the other charges dropped. I can't help but wonder what Missy's life would have been like if only there were different circumstances. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's terrible. Updates after the show and stuff. Sitcoms Online is yet again a fantastic resource to articles that have either been totally deleted from the internet or stuck behind weird paywalls on shady websites that overcharge your credit card. I will curate a list of these articles, the ones I used, by name, title, and date. And if they all fit, they will either be in the episode description box on YouTube or whatever application website you're viewing or listening to this to, or linked to an article on www.DESTRUCTOBLOG.com. So let's go. I usually try to do these either as one big summary or go chronological. I kind of mixed that up last time and it was a little confusing, but it sort of worked. So let's sort of do both. I looked hard for more details on some side characters and updates on what Melissa Munday is up to nowadays, but I couldn't find much. I don't know, maybe leave her alone because she was like a kid, but maybe that doesn't matter. I don't know. I mean, no doxing people, please. YouTube content policy, don't do it. Someone dropped a canister of green ooze onto the floor of a Dunkin' Donuts, and Jerry Wayne Strickland materialized into human form, sort of like watching the final act of the movie Akira, but in reverse. At some point, he gets in trouble with the law. He was sentenced in January of 1984 for check fraud and grand larceny. He was paroled 1 year later in 1985. There is no mention anywhere on the internet of the rape and, quote, malicious assault talked about in the episode of Unsolved Mysteries, where he apparently raped and tried to murder his former sister-in-law, which I find to be really odd. I found no mention of it anywhere except for Unsolved.com and the actual Unsolved Mysteries episode. Jerry and Missy were from the Cumberland Gap area of the Appalachian Mountains, about 35 miles apart, and in rural America that's not very far apart. Jerry is from a place called Hagerstown, Maryland. Missy was from a town called Hancock, a small town with a population under 2,000. I got those feels, I can relate. In an article via Detroit Free Press by the Seattle Times, so confusing, Melissa's teachers were interviewed. Munday got good grades, was on the basketball team, a choral singer, and it also mentions that she enjoyed playing jokes on people. The principal of her school remarks, quote, "She always had a wisecrack," and "I thoroughly enjoyed being around her." The assistant principal adds, "There is nothing I could say that isn't good about her." Cleaver, the principal, also gives out his theory as to why the whole thing may have started. I quote, "Our kids are not farm kids, but they're rural. There's not a great deal going on here. It's not the social center of the tri-state area. At 15 or 16 years old, sometimes girls' heads are turned by the color of a guy's automobile," which in this case was a blue 1986's Chevrolet Camaro. Remember, it's important. I mean, it isn't. Anyway, the two met. The stuff happened that happened in the show and all the things I said, and the two ran away together. According to Jerry, and this is from the same article written by Georgia Kovanis, which sometimes is credited as George A. Kovanis. I don't know if that's sexism or it's just that Georgia is spelled Georgia. Anyway, in this thing, Jerry says, when she was with her friends, she loved school. But when she went home, she was unhappy. They wouldn't let her go nowhere. He basically attributes their relationship coming down to the fact that he treated her like an adult and not like a teenager. But she was a 15-year-old girl, so gross. He says, "I'm a lonely person. I don't mingle with people. All I wanted was a friend. The more we talked, the closer we got." 15-year-old girl. Munday's father, Robert, was quoted in an additional article by Kovanis, where it seems like he specifically told her to not get involved with Jerry. Apparently, she told him, quote, not to worry about her, that she was only 15, and knew we wouldn't let her have this man as a lover, and that she had run off with him. But of course, doth protest too much, and that exact thing was happening. I don't know if I wrote that wrong, but it sort of made sense. He was like, don't run off with this guy, and she did. I don't know, man. I drank a six-pack today. Fuzzy details of this period, like my memory. They moved to Centerville, Virginia, then relocate near Pontiac, Michigan. Missy gets pregnant and has a son named Jamie. After the two absconded from Missy's home and Missy applied for her job at the gas station, an old 76 station, she lied about her age and claimed to be 19 years old. She gave the name Melissa Strickland. She started as a cashier and was later promoted. March to April 1987. An alleged conversation between Jerry and his then co-worker, named Gregory Chapman, takes place. They were talking about how they could plan a robbery. They chat about how it would be a good idea to rob the gas station courier at Jerry's girlfriend's job because he carried large amounts of money and he would be open to attack while the safe was open. Their plan was to interrupt the courier, kidnap him, rob him, then beat him up and leave him in the Fish Lake area stranded. Again with the fucking water thing names, Michigan. He was adamant that killing him was never discussed in their conversation. This information from court examination in an article also by Georgia Kovanis of the Detroit Free Press. Also, Fish Lake. Way to name shit, Michigan. What the fuck? Is that near Ocean Beach? Or is that nearby tree forests? How about let's go to Grass Valley. How about we go to Rock Mountain, you fucks. I've been sick for, I think, 3 of the 5 episodes of this fucking podcast. At this time, according to the article, lover says Strickland confessed to murder. Jerry and Missy apparently buy a van specifically in order to kidnap the gas station courier, Elmer. Missy helped plan the attack, suggesting that they do it on Monday because there were no pickups on Sunday. Therefore, the amount of cash that Elmer would be carrying would be larger than normal. The plan did not involve murder at all, according to Missy. But it did. Monday, May 11th, 1987. Morning. Missy arrives at work, playing normal. Elmer arrives to do the final cash pickup. Jerry arrives with his van, and he lures Elmer out to look at it. Then he pulls a gun, handcuffs Elmer, makes him lay down, and then escorts Elmer and Missy with the money to the inside of the van and handcuff them together. His plan was allegedly to take them out into the woods, make sure he had all the money, hit Elmer on the head, and leave Elmer handcuffed to something, and according to Missy, he was going to, quote, rape me. What the fuck? Maybe that was the threat that he was giving to Elmer, she meant. That's not clear. This basically happens according to plan. Missy is uncuffed and runs away while Elmer was on the ground. She returns to the van and waits. Shortly after her, Jerry arrives. He tells her he left Elmer alive and handcuffed to a tree. At 10:30 a.m., Elmer was reported as missing. At 11 a.m., neighbors heard gunshots. Elmer was found one day after the robbery, which was 1 p.m. the following Tuesday. Where he was found was apparently near a popular fishing hole. He was found next to a lake in a marshland woods by some teenagers who planned to go fishing. Keep in mind he was shot in the back of the head twice, from under 3 feet away. What a fucking nightmare for them to see. Elmer DeBoer had 3 daughters and a wife, Mary. She was actually interviewed on camera for the show, Unsolved Mysteries, by the way, but all of her footage for this episode was cut. Elmer was murdered when he was 38. He had worked for the Lehman Oil Company for about 7 years. An acquaintance named James Dahl was interviewed by the Detroit Free Press, and he said that he knew Elmer and that, quote, "This whole thing is unbelievable," and he was a real nice man who never missed a day. Unlike Jerry, who is an unlikable garbage goblin who wrote bad checks and kicked puppies for a living. Nobody paid him to do it, but he insisted he was a professional. Missy and Jerry were traced back to their home, a Springfield Township apartment, but it was cleared out. They had already gone to Moses Lake, Washington. The pair tried to disappear. In Moses Lake, Jerry gets a job as a mechanic at a local Kmart. Munday is both mentioned as working at a greeting card store, probably a Hallmark store, are those still a thing, and working at a hotel. How could Missy live with herself after all of this? How had she become so brutal and heartless? Well, later, in Missy's court testimony, she testifies that she never knew that Elmer was killed until later. She says Jerry later confessed this fact, quote, "in case something happens." This was approximately 2 months after the crime was committed, around July of 1987. But she stayed with Jerry for whatever reason. Probably didn't think she had much choice. The murder was months ago, and she was an accessory to it now. A few months after his murder confession to her, Missy gets pregnant again. Jerry, according to the Detroit Free Press, finally has what he wants in life: a nice family and a good job. All it took was statutory rape, check fraud, and murder. And mountains of Little Caesars pizza.
Pizza.
Things seemed normal for a while. February 5th, 1988. This episode of Unsolved Mysteries airs. The couple actually see the show. They start a fucking yard sale to sell furniture and household items in order to skip town. Missy gave notice to her job or jobs and said she was going to move to West Virginia, and they were going to help Jerry's brother run a family flower shop, which is weird because pretty sure none of his family live in West Virginia, and even so, his family have got to hate him.
and probably also flowers. They then went to their friend's house, the Ibarras, Juan and Penny, to give them their baby because they were going away. Apparently, they then decided to turn themselves into the police. So basically, they needed a babysitter for a jail vacation. The police arrive at the Ibarra's house that night and arrest Jerry and Missy. I guess they beat them to the turning themselves in thing because they dicked around for so goddamn long. How did the police beat them to their own turning themselves in confession thing? Jerry says, quote, "They were hunting for us. Why run? You gotta turn yourselves in. That's common sense." As if he knows what the fuck that is. Apparently, they were flipping the fuck out, then planned to drive back to Michigan to turn themselves in directly to the police. They called a bunch of their friends who advised them to just turn themselves in to the local police instead of going on a big interstate journey while they were wanted by the goddamn police, just so they could go do it to the main branch in person. Jerry said, quote, "We don't have any money. We don't know what to do. I was scared." You know, I wonder if Elmer was scared before you murdered him, you fucking weasel taint. They famously were very compliant because, as Jerry claims, double negatively, "I don't have no problems with the police." He will later claim the police involved him in a conspiracy and that they only have circumstantial evidence. They apparently had no idea they were on the Michigan State Police's top 10 most wanted list. Jerry claims at this point he didn't know anything about the murder, didn't know Elmer, and furthermore that Missy had quit or lost her job before this event even happened. Anyway, their neighbors and friends said they were, quote, nice people. They, quote, can't believe it. And they were, quote, a nice, quiet family who mostly stayed inside, played cards and other boring 1980s activities. Probably, I spy with my little eye something that looks like the inside of an old mayonnaise jar. It's Jerry's face. At his arraignment, old Cooter, with sidebar, yes, his alias at one point was Cooter, as well as Jerry Wayne Strickland. Just as a reminder, his legal birth name is Jerry Wayne Strickland. It's just so fucking close to his real name. It's just, god damn it, he's so fucking stupid. Anyway, at his arraignment, Cooter says he's innocent. I don't know why Michigan is saying I did this. Probably because you did it. The pair were extradited to Michigan for trial, and Jamie, the baby, was moved as well. From the Detroit Free Press again, quote, in a way, I'm looking forward to going back. And I don't want to hide nothing. Jerry lies, double negatively again. According to Jerry, they were moving all over the place to hide from Missy's parents and not the police. He claims it would have been pretty stupid to use their real names at work and such if they were running from the law. I don't know why he's daring us to say the obvious. Quote, all we want in life is family, Jerry said, of his child bride. He also states that they definitely had run out of money by this point, which is fun to think about, because this is about 9 months after robbing $10,000 to $15,000 from Elmer in 1980s money, and then murdering him for it. They somehow burned all this money, which in today's money is almost $23,000, in less than a year, while maintaining a 2 to 3 job household of 2 adults and a baby. So we are saying they had a modest household, 1 shitty fucking blue pickup truck, and they had 3 jobs among them, and this extra bonus of almost $23,000 in today's money of murder money, and they blew all that shit in 9 fucking months. Okay? So that's kind of why I'm taking this bitchy tone right now. It's like, they killed this guy for fucking no reason. They blew all the money. It's gone. Fucking hell. It's now March 1987. Articles start arriving about Missy getting basically full immunity on murder charges for her testimony against Jerry Strickland. She was still underage at this point, so she was held in a juvenile detention center before bonding out. Her attorney said she, quote, doesn't want to be charged with or incarcerated for a crime she didn't commit. Duh. Missy would indeed make a full statement of the real version of the story in court. When interviewed about this, Jerry said, quote, she's just carrying out what I told her to do, and she's carrying my baby and I don't want her locked up and under all this pressure. She had to do it, and that's okay with me. Actually saying shit that, other than my terrible fake accent, isn't totally horrible for perhaps the first and only time. August of 1988. Jerry Strickland's murder confession is discussed during the testimony of Melissa Munday. In case anything should ever happen, I think you ought to know that I did it. Missy said, quote, Jerry told me that when things got rough to tell the truth and that he would stand up and tell the truth. I don't have any records saying that he actually honestly said any goddamn thing about anything after saying that. Pretty much did the David Davis, I didn't do it. In late August of 1988, Jerry was convicted of kidnapping, murder, and armed robbery. The jury deliberated for about 6 hours. He had a lot of charges and counts involved in his conviction, including the part where he had previously committed a felony, so he had possession of a firearm while being a felon added. And he was on parole at the time, so obviously that made it extra fucked. Also, they threw in the check fraud stuff at some point. Let's not forget. The cheese-puffed marshmallow fan, or is he the cheese-puffed marsh murder man? Which is better, you can choose, was given double life sentences. Jim Finkelstein notes in his article, Man Convicted in Murder of Oil Firm Courier, that the assistant prosecutor Charles Speakerman lifted a finger and said, in court, now you know what a cold-blooded murderer looks like. Which is apparently the same what an unbaked cake in a dirty shirt looks like. Missy's testimony lessened her punishment dramatically, and she was also found in court to actually be unaware of the murder, and was convicted only of planning the armed robbery part. The combination of those two factors and the fact that she was, again, a teenager at the time, created a very light sentence of a mere 7 months, or 9 months. Journalists who report different details, goddammit, in juvenile home, which she started midway in age 18, and she was released at the age of 19. Finally, Mary DeBoer is quoted about the slaying of her husband. Quote, I can't say I'm glad it's over, because it will never be over for me. Post-conviction. When Melissa Munday was 19, she had moved in with her family back home, which according to an article I found was a trailer in Hagerstown Trailer Park Now. Wow, that is written shittily. And was soon taking care of 2 children by Jerry. Somewhere around the time of her testimony, the couple officially called it quits, I guess. Also probably because she was legally a child. No new information was verified about her, and she doesn't appear in any searches on any new news stories. Maybe for the best. We're about at the end here, but here's one crazy button end to this story. So weird and crazy, I almost don't want to repeat it. But a woman found Jerry to be super hot. Article title, Woman Hopes to Marry Jailed Michigan Murderer, is an article by Jeanne May of the Detroit Free Press. Wow, it's always DFP. A woman named Robin Marks from the Moses Lake area, the same area where Jerry and Missy lived in that one apartment they fled to, desires the doughboy. Quote,
I look around at the guys in this town. Nobody can compare to Jerry. He's so good-hearted and good with kids. This whole town is full of creeps.
Is the good with kids part the part where he fucking... I can't even... Oh, God. I can't believe this stupid asshole said he's really good with kids. Oh, my God. She was 35 at the time. I think 8 or 9 years older than Jerry. So, like, way too old for him. She apparently fell in love with Jerry during a phone call with him while he was in prison. Actually, it was her mother who was the manager of the apartments where Jerry and Missy lived when they absconded from her parents and that whole thing there. He helped fix her car one time, and she saw him around, so I guess she wanted to get with him the second he was single, despite the murdery, statutory, rapey, burglaring circumstances. Anyway, mutual friends hooked them up. For some reason, they decided they wanted to get married, and she was interviewed for being massively dense, so fucking dense that it was newsworthy.
I probably know a lot more about him than I would know about a man if I had been married to him for 3 years.
What? Why 3 years? What? What? Why? What? The article adds that she hopes to get married by telephone or by proxy because, quote, she can't afford to come to Michigan. What? What? Her plan was to marry Jerry. When he won his appeal, by the fucking way, he actually appealed his conviction. They would move back to Moses Lake with her 2 kids, she thought, and they would sue for custody to get the other 2 kids away from Missy, because obviously she couldn't be trusted to be responsible with children. By the way, one of her kids was 16, which, if you remember, is older than when Jerry started to have sex with Missy, because he's a fucking teen toucher. What the fuck are you thinking? The fact this happened is so stupid, and she agreed to an interview. She adds, of course, that she believes Jerry didn't do the murder, and Missy made the whole thing up. Did she also lie about her age, dumb bitch? Quote from her.
A lot of people believe everything that was in the paper and on TV.
What about the court documents, you fuck? He was already in trouble for check fraud and rape and attempted murder. Malicious assault. Why the fuck am I even trying to find rational thoughts in a desert of brain power? Let's just finish this fucking story. Further updates. Once I was given criticism because I actually don't have many updates to these stories and my voice is always hoarse. As far as I'm concerned, until she is involved in another mystery or crime, Melissa Munday's chapter is closed on this podcast. Jerry, however, I feel was more openly fair game for life updates, and he's in prison, so it's not like he's gonna get doxxed or someone will mess with his children or shit in his mailbox. He doesn't have one because he doesn't live with any normal human beings in a house or anything, or he's in fucking prison. Also, he was an adult at the time and got a 15-year-old girl pregnant and then got her pregnant again later before she was an adult and shot a man in the back of the head to get money he didn't even spend carefully so he can go fuck himself forever. Nay, 5 ever. Jerry is currently nearing 300 pounds. I don't mean to fat shame anybody. It's just kind of he's in prison and it's he's getting really fat. It's get the fucking... All you can do in prison is read books and lift weights, and we know he's not reading any books. Anyway, he's gained a bunch of weight on the Jerry Craig prison diet, and he's about 58 years old now. He lives in the luxurious Thumb Correctional Facility at Security Level 2. The most recent photo of him is this one from 2016, where he looks like he just made love to a ham sandwich.
Jerry, you are really giving it to this ham.
The relationship with Robin, the lady that I mentioned who wanted to date him, didn't work out when she realized there was no fucking way he was ever setting foot outside ever again because he's a human ham steak someone left at the bottom of the fridge for too long. Mary DeBoer sadly passed away in 2014 at the age of 66. I don't believe she ever remarried. I don't really have personal things again on her, but I do know that she had 3 daughters that had children, and her family grew through her children. Don't let the memory of their family, don't let the memory of Elmer DeBoer die, or victims like him. I want to drive this home. He was a normal man just going about his job on an average day. He did not deserve what happened to him and his family. That's why I shit on these people so hard. This guy just went into work. He was making money. He had his own life. He had his own plans. He had his own dreams. Nobody deserves this. Nobody does. These people fucking suck. Anyway, comedy podcast.
Result. Solved.
Jerry Strickland and Melissa Munday were caught and punished. Fucking asshole.
Story 2. Final appeal.
The key to all the criminality in this episode is Smith & Wesson revolvers and fucking Camaros. Another Camaro! Another gas station robbery. Okay, let's see what the show said. July 14th, 1979. Garland, Texas. A man dressed like one of my uncles walks into a gas station and points a gun at the worker, Doyle. He shakes the gun in his face, saying, "God damn, I'll kill you." Or more sexfully, "God damn, I'll fill you." I can't read my own handwriting. He takes the money from the register. The robbery goes on for 10 minutes. Doyle's eyewitness testimony, quote, puts away a man for life. Doyle, not his real name by the way, says, quote, "You'd never forget the person who does it. It being putting a revolver in your face, tying you up, and robbing you. That man," he says, "was definitely Michael Scott Martin. The problem with that is, Michael was apparently about 70 miles away, according to 5 other witnesses. He says he was working on his motorcycle in Fort Worth. He has a previous offense on the books, so he was sentenced to life with possibility of parole in 1999. At the time of broadcast, he had already served 8 years. He professes his innocence.
It's a depressing experience. I mean, I didn't rob this gas station. I thought I had sufficient proof in just having people that knew where I was at.
Man, don't end your fucking sentence with a preposition. Here's the breakdown. No physical evidence. 1 eyewitness, Doyle, versus 5 other witnesses, Michael's neighbors. No gun. No money was recovered. No fingerprints recovered. No surveillance footage exists. Martin did have that previous offense, though. Now what was that? Unsolved solves as follows. At the age of 26, he committed crazy redneck bullshit and was convicted of being a crazy drunk white person in Texas in the 70s. In 1979, he was arrested. Michael and a friend were driving around drunk in yet another blue Chevrolet Camaro. They stop for snacks and walk around the store eating Polish sausages and potato chips. They had actually intended to pay for these things, I guess, but couldn't wait. The manager stopped them and said he was going to call the cops right now. Michael throws some money down on the counter next to the open food containers like a fucking caveman, but the manager is adamant that they technically just stole from the store and he was going to be arrested. Michael is like, "You want some of this?
You want some of this? You want some of this? You want some? Come on, man."
Freaks out, pulls a knife, and runs for his second-generation GM F-body Chevrolet Camaro. The older model from the first story, and in my opinion, a more classic redneck means of conveyance. The store dorks armed with brooms rush to the door after them like they're fucking Tom and Jerry. Seriously, I mean, these fucking high school kids that work at the grocery store standing in front of the store with a bunch of brooms. It's like, Michael swings open the door of his second-generation GM F-body Chevrolet Camaro, which is blue, retrieves a gun, which looks like a Ruger 22 caliber pistol, and fires wildly into the air.
Holy fuck.
Like your high school girlfriend when you tried to get her into Call of Duty that one time and she couldn't quite get aiming and walking to work at the same time. Fellow kids. He refers to this as, quote, an adolescent act, and admits maybe it was dumber than that since he actually was verily a malicious 26-year-old redneck hooligan hillbilly. Detective Wheatley is like, yeah. Martin, despite fleeing, was eventually prosecuted and pled guilty to assault with a deadly weapon, which only got him 4 years of probation with no time served. So how was Martin identified during the gas station robbery? Wheatley was out riding a motorcycle and claims he saw MSM clearly just a few feet away driving in the area of the crime at the time. Rhyme. Unsolved Mysteries shows the same Camaro driving around with the 80s McMustache face driving close enough to Wheatley that, as he says, he could have
Reached over the top of my motorcycle and slapped him.
My pillow fort is collapsing. The dream is collapsing. When Wheatley hears of the crime, he wants the case. He knew Michael Scott Key from his previous crime. He interviews the witness, puts out a lineup of photos, and apparently the witness immediately picks out the photo of Michael Scott's office and he was arrested. I genuinely have now forgotten the suspect's name. Problem. MSM and 5 other witnesses put him at Lake Worth. I didn't realize how many Worths there were in Texas. Anyway, in front of his home working on his motorcycle that day during the crime. He was purported to be at his home, seen there all day, except for a 2-hour period when he left to buy spare parts. Could he have done the crime and then come back in about 2 hours? Unsolved Mysteries doesn't spend much time on this question. Theoretically, he would have to drive 70 miles there, so basically 140 miles there and back to his house, and then spend 10 minutes robbing fake Shemp Doyle. Press space now to doubt. Haha, you just paused video on YouTube, you stupid fuck. It's possible if he drove 70 miles an hour the entire 2 hours nonstop, not including the crime time. So, would it be impossible for him to do this crime in this time, like this rhyme? I got a dime. Probably? Fuck. Okay, let's start this episode over. He would have to drive over 70 miles an hour for an entire hour with no stops, not get noticed, rob a guy, then immediately do the same thing in reverse. But I guess, the neighbors could have just lied about it, and this doesn't mean anything. Which brings us to the nerd neighbor, or Nerdber. For perhaps the first time ever, the show Battlestar Galactica is used as an alibi in court. Nerdber.
Oh my god. That is Hacker Man. It's fucking Hacker Man.
Hacker Man.
Friend of MSM made sure to be at his house with him because they really wanted to see the newest episode of Battlestar Galactica.
It's 7 o'clock Saturday night. I remember it real well because there was a television show that I wanted to catch. It was Battlestar Galactica.
Oh my god, he's a Battlestar Galactica fan, of course. I mean, so am I.
5 witnesses versus 2. 5 neighbors versus 1 police officer and 1 victim. This was almost a stalemate in court until MSM's redneck temper tantrum was admitted into evidence for his character. This soured the jury harshly, and they returned a guilty verdict after a mere 15-minute deliberation, much to the joy of the cop guy, Wheatley. The cops say these 2 offenses are more than enough to put someone in jail for life. 20 years till parole, available in 1999. Which as a positive was a convenient excuse to listen to Prince at any opportunity and really believe in the music. Brad Lawler, man with pro wrestler name, says it always bothered him that no physical evidence came out of the investigation, and the neighbors' witness testimonies were quite believable. no, quote, clincher evidence exists. Update. Michael Scott Martin was released, but has a lifetime of parole. Updates after the show and whatnot. Another real nothing burger in the ways of updates. Sorry, people who want to rely on me for all of the updates. I don't have all the answers because I'm just a guy in an office. Michael Martin apparently is just living a quiet, normal life, and although he was very adamant he was innocent, he remains on parole for, as far as I know, for the rest of his life, but he is no longer in prison. The earliest document I can find about the case is the appeal opinion about the first case appeal after Martin's appeal was affirmed, or the appeal was denied. It's a thing the judge wrote about how he isn't letting Martin out of prison. This is from November 4th, 1981. After searching for records on the Pacer site and being charged $3 for using the search function and not finding any results or incorrect results, I could not find the original documents from the Texas courts. So that means I can't find the actual court transcript documents. I suspect they were never digitized. It's totally possible. And they don't appear to have been reproduced anywhere online or in any searchable database that I can find. Anyway, all we have here is the judge's court appeal opinion thing. I will summarize using my own questions I had while watching the episode. The robber that attacked Doyle Lovelady in the gas station also stole the keys to his car. Lincoln or a Buick? I'm not good at luxury 80s cars because they all look the same. If Officer Wheatley actually saw Martin on that day, remember he was riding his motorcycle, the car that Martin was driving was actually Doyle's, right? Wrong. Because I forgot Doyle's car was found at Michael Scott Martin's old apartment building somehow. Couldn't it have been a coincidence? Possibly. But the show mentioned that Michael Scott Martin lived at this apartment building only about 1 month prior to the crime. And the only reason they found the car so fast is because it was so very close to where the crime was committed, near the gas station. It's even more suspicious that this was a mere 15 minutes after the crime was committed. And where did Wheatley say he saw Martin again? 3 blocks from the gas station, 10 minutes after Doyle's car was found at Michael Scott Martin's old apartment building. Did Wheatley also identify Martin's car? In court, Wheatley identifies he saw a guy he thought was Michael Scott Martin driving a blue Chevrolet Camaro of the same type discussed previously. Later at the station, when he heard the victim's description, he immediately thought of Martin and his Chevy Camaro he had just seen. He hadn't connected seeing Martin and the crime that was just committed until right now. According to him, seeing both the man's face and the exact same car from the previous crime is why he requested the case, assembled the photo lineup in the first place, and then showed it to that victim. The victim then positively IDs Martin, although he thought he could have been mistaken at first. But he is, Michael Martin he is depicted as wearing a rednecky hat and big sunglasses and a big stupid mustache during this robbery.
But like every hillbilly at the time looked exactly like this. Like they were all taking cues from the 1979 Joe Dirt Texas robbery fashion show. Now strut like you have no butt. Turn and show the mullet.
Question. When Martin was in court for this, did the jury know that he was a crazy redneck? Well, in court, apparently, they waited to present his past crime as evidence to the jury only when Martin was called to the stand. After many other witnesses, the opposing prosecutor said to Martin, quote, "Tell the jury what you did with an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon," which was both worded badly and really hurt Martin's case. Even though Martin testified he was innocent and he, quote, "had every intention of living up to my probation," the hammer fell with him having a life sentence. In addition, this 1981 appeal was denied. He was eligible for appeal again in 1986, and once again there was a hearing with a corresponding court opinion. I have this 1986 court opinion. This 1986 court opinion has the original dates of the events more accurately preserved, and it makes a little more sense why Wheatley was so sure Martin was the one that he saw. and it makes more sense why the court hit him so damn hard with this. Michael Martin's redneck-style dinner date with his boy and his gun at the supermarket ended with his conviction July 9th, 1979. Remember that. So he was sentenced to 4 years probation and a $2,500 fine that day, which is a lot in 1979. The show mentions that the robbery happened 2 weeks into Martin's parole, but court records show that the Doyle robbery took place on July 14th, 1979, only 5 days after his conviction. So, if he did do it, he's unbelievably stupid. So that can make you believe he's maybe more innocent because of how crazy it would be to violate probation with a fucking armed robbery less than a week, again, 5 days after he was convicted. But it may also prove that he's just a huge moron, and that the reason Wheatley could recognize him so easily, so immediately, is that he just saw this guy at work. So, like, it's a weird situation, I guess, but not that weird. People commit stupid crimes and never admit they did it pretty commonly. At first, I was kind of on his side while watching the episode, but going over the details again while writing them down and reading the court opinions on his appeals, it's pretty clear why the decision was made the way it was. It's less likely that the police hated Michael Martin and just wanted him to be the guy who did this because it was easy to convict him for another crime again, like a week later, then Martin was just a crazy redneck guy who did dumb shit with no regard. And his friends either lied to protect him or they just all somehow got the day mixed up. And I hate to say it, but that's kind of the end of this story for now. Not much has happened since Martin was released. He, at the time, still claimed he was innocent, and as far as I can tell, is totally living within his parole. You may be thinking, well, witness testimonies aren't highly valued unless they're coming from a police officer. We have a he said, Cylon said situation. Who knows? But it makes sense with all this on the table, kind of.
Result. Solved.
But with an asterisk, not an asterisk. Legally, the case is solved, although it could be possible, however unlikely, that someone else committed the crime and this was a bit of a misunderstanding. There simply is no hard evidence to support this, however. Just, control your redneckery.
Story 3. Mysterious Death.
September 10th, 1984. San Francisco Sandwich. Rice-A-Roni. The This Place Right Here treat. A teenage boy's body is found on the rocky shores near the San Francisco Ridge area by 2 men bird watching. He is identified as Kurt McFall, 17 years old. He is bruised and half naked with no immediately clear cause of death. Kurt's father, Tom, says, "It's murder." Quote, "Kurt could have handled himself on that cliff area because he was a mountain climber, and he couldn't have drowned either because he was also an experienced diver. Doesn't really seem to think it could have been accidental." Kurt appeared to be a popular kid with lots of friends, so if it was murder, then why'd that happen? Get ready for some satanic panic.
Kurt told this friend of his that he was involved in some kind of satanic cult and that he wanted out.
What? Oh my god, did we just hit a satanic panic episode? His father received an anonymous phone call from someone saying Kurt was in the process of escaping a cult and that he was afraid he would be killed. Kurt had a double life as someone who believed in witchcraft and probably satanic, scary, spooky stuff like free will and sex before marriage. Tom then searched Kurt's room, and inside he found a knife made from a deer's hoof, a necklace made of stones and feathers, and drawings of occult stuff, I guess.
A necklace of stone and feathers, and drawings of witchcraft and violent fantasies. These seemed to be further proof that Kurt was leading a double life.
Or he was a 17-year-old boy who had no access to internet porn. He determined from these items that Kurt had been involved in Dungeons and Dragons. Yes, they actually say that. I'm not being a bitch. At 16, Kurt joined a group called SCA, or Society for Creative Anachronism. Oh no. SCA people dress up in suits of armor and have mock battles with weapons they bought at Toys R Us in the parking lot of a subway station.
And his death certainly had nothing to do with any...
Oh my god, she's still in the outfit.
Yes, dear listener, Kurt and his buddies were into LARPing.
And the actual costumes of the period.
Oh my god, this is the funniest fucking LARP thing I've ever seen.
Some people don't like to call it LARPing. It's fucking LARPing. It's always LARPing. Kurt joined another group around this time that was interested in, quote, the pagan religion, as if there was one. His friend, whose electricity is shut off, explains that Kurt's personality changed during this period. The joke is his friend is supposed to be anonymous and they blacked out his face. And he was the one who contacted Kurt's father.
Gradually, over a period of perhaps 6 months.
Look out for the guy with the Utah hat. Let's target him for... Oh, God.
He kind of moved from just studying with an interest in medieval religion to actually adopting that religion as his.
What religion would that be?
Through that process.
Was it the paperboy religion? You newsy fuck.
He says Kurt adopted the new spooky paganism thing and lost almost all of his friends in the process. Gabriel Carrillo, whatever, aka Karotic, says that this is not just a religion, but a craft that is magical.
Oh my god, you can see that he's way too fat for his shirt.
This is somehow the most 2013 hipster shit ever.
Oh no, not the curly bangs. Oh no.
Gabby says he makes no attempt to control people's lives in his cult. I mean, it's a singular-minded group of people who are individualists, also known as a cult.
Kurt studied pagan religion with Gabriel Carrillo.
He studied pagan religion?
This is a religion which is also an art, a craft, which has techniques which are at their essence magical.
Spoken by a true virgin.
Saturday, September 10th. Karotic and Kurt are spending time together and had dinner and a movie. Kurt was planning on staying the night at his place, no homo. For some reason, though, Kurt left to go swimming at Ocean Beach. Oh my god, Ocean Beach, that's a real place. At around midnight, but Karotic says Kurt came back and was still restless. He came to Carrot Dick's bedroom at 3 a.m. According to Kakarot, he says, "It's too hot in here." At least that's what Kurt in the reenactment says, and went back to the beach again at just after 3 a.m. Gabriela Carrillo here says he probably took risks swimming at that time and got caught in undertow or weird current and drowned, or maybe went climbing around on the cliffs and slipped. Not so crazy if you're already doing crazy shit like swimming in the dirty cold-ass water at 3 o'clock in the morning. The next day, Kurt's car was found at a golf course near the water. Kurt's license was on the floor, the keys were in the car, and $20 were in the glove compartment. Maybe they were insinuating that if it was a robbery or something, that they would have taken that. They would have looked in the glove compartments. I don't know. His handmade suit of armor, which was in the car, was now missing. There were also beer bottles scattered all over the place. Who steals a suit of armor made of Chef Boyardee cans from a car parked at a golf course and then leaves empty beer cans everywhere? Probably something with an EY ending in their name, like Rodney or Ricky. Kurt's dad says his son didn't drink, and his toxicology report on his body after he was deceased said that there was no alcohol in his blood. There is some in mine. He says the scene was, quote, set up. Kurt's body was found just under a mile from Gab's place, just under the cliff lookout area of the golf course where he parked the car. He appeared to have been in the water a while. No shoes, socks, or shirt. The belt was there, but no buckle. And he still had jeans on. Coast Guard guy says it looks like he simply fell from the cliff and was covered in water or washed up here later. The coroner says, quote, multiple traumatic injuries caused the death as well as severe blood loss. It is believed by most he slipped and fell, but Kurt's dad claims the coroner says it was most probably homicide, but they have no actual proof of it. The cause of death was left as unexplained. Kurt's father is adamant his son was murdered, and it likely had something to do with him, quote, uncovering something in the pagan nerd cult in the guy's living room we saw earlier. He honestly believes a bunch of pagans murdered his son to keep unknown, unspecified secrets which he doesn't explain or even speculate upon, secret. No Face Friend claims,
my personal theory is that Kurt stumbled onto some information that he wasn't supposed to know about. These types of organizations don't make threats, make actions.
These kinds of organizations don't make threats. They make actions. Like he's in a fucking movie. These kinds of organizations usually don't make threats because these kinds of organizations don't often actually exist. It's usually just nerds chanting nonsense in order to have a group of like-minded friends hang out and possibly fuck while charging magical crystals in their buttholes. Gabriel, who is somehow the only reasonable person here, to my great fucking shock, since he uses a fake name and practices magic spells in his single bedroom apartment, Gabriel states the obvious. Quote, if I was going to murder somebody, the last person I would murder is somebody staying at my house and whose father knew that he was staying at my house. I mean, this whole thing is stupid. The story is starting to make me angry at Kurt's dad for jumping to conclusions, but I mean, he's suffering insane loss, so I will not be like mercilessly making fun of him. Pat, patting myself on the back. Oh, I'm such a good person. No updates from Unsolved Mysteries. Probably because it was a fucking accident. Updates after the show and background information. Another one with no further updates. I'm again telling you that up front. There was never any publicized information regarding this case after all parties were interviewed. Tom McFall, the deceased's father, pursued further investigation, but it appears nothing came of it. The police never discovered any threads to pull. No motive was established, no evidence of foul play, no confessions, just a suspicion. Things were off. And rumors. The only interesting piece of information related to the case was found on an otherwise unrelated, to say the least, website about stock trading by a guy who apparently knew McFall when they were kids. The website is called Slope of Hope. The article is called My Youthful Friendship with Death. The author's name is Tim Knight. The piece begins with the author saying, quote, I've never been rattled by human death, or I've never been rattled by human death, which is a truly frightening way to begin pretty much anything. Try it next time you're in line at the ATM. Mr. Knight was apparently friends with Kurt when they were teens, and they were about the same age. His opinion of him echoed those that were featured in the show. Kurt was good-looking, popular, smart. Then he got more distant, strange. Then suddenly, he was gone. He met Kurt through another acquaintance that was also in the SCA, the LARPing group. He basically describes the SCA as, quote, pretty much full of dorks, the morbidly obese, and the other folks who really preferred to pretend to live in the Middle Ages versus, say, the present. A little mean, but probably accurate. I probably would have joined the local chapter myself if such a thing existed when I was a youth. Basically, the author and Kurt were good friends, talked on the phone a lot. They were obsessed with computers, technology, and girls. He says the talks focused more and more on, weird sex things, the SCA, and his terrible soup can suit of armor. The two had a falling out, and one day, Tim just hears that Kurt has died. He doesn't state that he has the secret knowledge like No Face Friend did in the episode, but he does note that Kurt's interests and behaviors did drastically change over a couple years. And the idea that he went swimming at the cliffs at 3 a.m. in the freezing cold water, well, according to him, quote, even on the hottest August day, nobody sensible would actually go try to swim in the melted ice out there. So it certainly wouldn't be an appealing prospect at 3 in the freaking morning. Kurt's father actually called the author at one point and asked if Kurt was talking about anything strange or was doing anything weird before they stopped hanging out. And he apparently, uncomfortably, relayed to him about all the weird sex stuff. It made him feel really gross to have to tell his grieving father about it, as it was his only real clue as to what he was doing. There was a part at the end of his piece, though, that I think you can also press X to doubt on. He relays a post from another board about how someone heard a rumor of police finding a witch woman who wore all black and had blood writing in her trailer and allegedly wrote a confession letter about pushing Kurt off the cliff as a sacrifice to something. I'd like to note that they give details, but not the town name, neighborhood, no people's names, and somehow none of this information was released publicly or used in any sort of investigation. Now, if you're looking at this story Occam's razor style, you're probably with me thinking he simply was screwing around or something and fell down into the cliffs and his body was washed into a cove. Whatever else weird crap may have totally been unrelated to his death, that, maybe just that some drunk idiots found his abandoned car and messed with it because drunk idiots. I don't know, man. That's my theory personally. Usually I don't like to have my own personal theories on stories that aren't ghost related, but let's look a little bit further into the area where this took place and some background information about the time his death occurred. And let me explain a little more why I kind of feel some things and feel this way. Okay, Google Maps time. Now, audio listeners, you can find this clip on Instagram, and you can find it on YouTube. And if I remember, I'll post a screenshot to the website, www.DESTRUCTOBLOG.com. Using clues from some pieces I had read and things they say in the episode, I think I have a basic idea of where all this took place, despite being, let's say, navigationally impaired. McFall is from Concord, California, which means he has to come all the way through here and go across the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge. But before you start singing "Everywhere You Look," that's the other bridge on the north side. You can see a lot of nearby neighborhoods here, probably where his buddy Carotid Artery lived, and I was pretty sure that they mentioned at some point that the death happened probably on Ocean Beach. But from their descriptions and where he actually shot the episode, it looks like this northern cliff-laden area by China Beach is where it all happened. Wait, yeah, Ocean Beach. I made fun of Michigan earlier for stupid fucking names. Ocean Beach. Is that really real? I owe Michigan an apology. On Kurt's Find a Grave memorial page, it states that his body was found at the base of a cliff at Land's End. There is a golf course here, like where he left his car, and the cliffs are pretty gnarly. Actually, if you rewatch the reenactment section where Kurt's doppelganger's body is taken away, you can see the Golden Gate Bridge. So it was either here where it happened or just where they filmed. When they actually take the body bag and put it into a vehicle in the reenactment, it appears they filmed that section here. So there's the geography of this case, at least of the episode, I guess, for ya. As a supplement, I want to mention that there were many cases like the McFall case, where a teen would, for example, die suddenly or go missing, and Satanism or belief in witchcraft was blamed. But one thing that was frequently brought up in the mental health of teens was Dungeons and Dragons. Seriously. People in the 80s often believed if they found D&D shit in their kid's room, it was akin to them engaging in actual human sacrifice, and they would often lose their shit, sometimes appearing on TV, making wild claims, writing stupid books, and how role-playing games can make teens go completely insane, and shit like that. It happened so often, in fact, there were how-to videos for parents and law enforcement made by stupid assholes about the signs of Stanism, the signs of Satanism, and how to deal with them. My favorite one was featured on Red Letter Media, the YouTube channel, which is the best YouTube channel, called The Law Enforcement Guide to Satanic Cults.
Oh, we're going to learn about some satanic cults today.
Hosted by this guy, Pastor Cop.
I'm Gordon Coulter,
who's a pastor and a cop. Let's watch it.
In satanic occultism, that which is good is bad, that which is bad is good. And as you view this learning and educational tape, pay attention to notice the reverse of everything that is normal becoming abnormal.
That's not a good start.
There are many crimes that are unsolved in our cities, and many of those crimes have ritualistic overtone, but they're hard to find.
Ritualistic overtones that are also hard to find. It's almost like this is all horse shit or something. He also talks about America's freedom of religion being a problem in uncovering the secrets of satanic cults, which is pretty fucking ironic for a Christian minister and police officer to say on camera.
That is also protected by the United States Constitution and the freedom of religion.
However, a difficulty immediately arises with the word cult. Unless we catch them actually breaking the law, we have no case.
They basically, throughout the video, misrepresent the entire idea of Satanism, as in, like, what do actual people who identify as Satanists do and believe? More broadly, things like what actually is considered Satanism.
Initiation into Satanism or a similar cult usually includes a spoken denial of the Christian faith, rebaptism in Satan's name, an oath of allegiance to Satan while standing in a magic circle, and a promise to sacrifice children to Satan.
And honestly, as Red Letter Media points out, the video mostly shows unrelated stock footage describing vague, quote, crimes,
or trespass, cruelty to animals, kidnapping,
rape, molestation, child abuse, child sexual abuse, ritual abuse, arson, murder, which might include human sacrifice, mass murders, or
cannibalism, drug trafficking, sexual trafficking of children, corpse theft, cemetery vandalism, black market sales of bones and skulls, black market baby selling, pedophilia, pornography, torture, desecrating churches or other religious buildings, human slavery, weapons violation, suicide, disposing of animal parts, illegal entry into mortuaries and cemeteries, necrophilia.
These things may or may not be satanic kinds of rituals. Follow-up investigations might indicate a deeper need to look into the dark side of your community.
And talk a lot about anal sex for some reason.
Anal, animal, oral, and vaginal ritual. During the blood ceremony, human blood from devotees of any age and any sex is consumed for strength. Anal.
Kidnappings of women, children, and animals are common. Anal, oral, and vaginal. Sex with demons. Human and animals, primarily large dogs. Anal. Sex with demons, infant sacrifice. Anal.
To be fair, this video was released in 1994, about 10 years after the death of our victim in the main story. So how about let's look at some articles directly from the same time period as that. From the Honolulu Star Bulletin, 12th of November 1987, is a story by Dennis Oliver, originally from the Associated Press. The title is, Some U.S. Youngsters Are Turning to Devil Worship in the 80s, which is a real banger. Oh, look, ads for Transformers? Rad. Only $14.99 for a double spy deception clone Autobot clone regular $20? No, I didn't misread that. From the article, it's recess in a San Francisco schoolyard, but not all the children are playing. One girl sits alone, slicing skin from her arm with a razor blade, then watches herself bleed. When counselors ask why, she tells them she worships the devil and cut herself in a self-mutilation ritual to gain her savior's approval. The scene is not unusual. Experts say an increasing number of young people are getting involved in devil worship and the occult. No one keeps statistics on the upsurge, but the story is told through a rising number of crimes, such as animal mutilation and vandalism at churches and graveyards across the country. Quote, I'd say it is pretty much the in thing of the 1980s for young people to do, said San Francisco Police Department Special Intelligence Officer Sandy Gallant, one of the country's leading experts on cult-related crime. Experts believe many children who choose to identify with cults fashioned after more serious devil worship do so for attention, and most don't seriously believe what they claim. So this article is reprinted a lot, and sometimes that part where the experts think the kids don't actually believe it is easy to skip over when you have Tom McFall, the father from this story, talk about weird shit he found in his son's room that made him believe his son was killed by occultists or Satanists, depending on who reprinted the story. Articles like this did a lot of harm, in my opinion. Even though a lot of expert opinions make it out like kids are just doing something edgy and don't believe in the occult for real, they sometimes included other stories or examples of kids doing occult-like things as proof that there is this scary rise in occult and satanic activity in the country poisoning the youth. There's even a connection in some versions of this article, such as the Petaluma Argus-Courier reprint of the same story, to the Silly Police Pastor video, where they identify that, according to, quote, experts, there are 3 kinds of Satanists. From the article, quote, some are legitimate Satanists who attend satanic church services, but confine their religious activities to what the law will allow. Others are self-styled Satanists, which includes groups of youth who decide to create their own way of worshiping the devil through assorted means, including some petty illegal activities. Thirdly, experts say, some Satanists are more traditional cultists who engage in such horrifying activities as bloodletting, child molestation, animal sacrifices, and sometimes human sacrifice. Again, looking at this, especially now, is hilariously ironic. The weird sex video hosted by Dennis Rader's brother here has a very similar 3-tier sorting method, but it calls the low-level Satanists dabblers, which I kind of enjoy.
There are 3 general areas and levels of involvement in satanic occult worship. The first would be dabblers. They're people who just use it for fun and games, may be involved in some video games and that kind of level, possibly a little graffiti. The second level would be those that are involved for spiritual reasons, and they recognize that there's power in the worship of Satan. These people generally worship together and try to find the mystery of it all. And then the third level would be criminal involvement, and that's the area that interests us. These people actually believe that they gain power through criminal activity, killing people through various rituals that are against the law in our states and in our country.
Further into this video, we are introduced to Eric Pryor, who was sort of famous for this kind of shit in the early 90s for being a Satanist or a witch, depending on which one of those words scares you more, that switched to be Christian and, quote, taught at Christian camps and made audio cassettes and other video cassettes, and I think a book about how he used to be a high satanic priest. So he was a guy on the inside, but now he's changed sides. He needs to change his haircut.
There's 2 different communities that use this park. One is the pagan or occultic community, and the other community is, of course, the homosexual community. Interestingly enough, they go hand in hand.
So again, this was covered by Red Letter Media, but in this video, he walks around a public park with recently spray-painted upside-down cross, which he says is a, quote, geoneric and common symbol.
And so, well, see, here you go. Upon entering the park, I mean, you can see they've already got started. And/or the horns of Satan. This is a very generic symbol, and it's a very common symbol.
Again, I don't know if this is all just circumstantive. Clearly, he just seems to have himself painted, and he's sifting through random trash and talking about how it was probably left there by Satanists for this or that reason.
Obviously, they probably had a party. Usually what they'll do is they'll mark It's almost like a path. They'll mark a path to kind of show you where the action's at. Basically, well, okay, over here. See, here you go. This, well, see, this is what I'm talking about. The implications of this is definitely satanic. They were probably worshiping Set, because it says Set here, so it's pretty obvious. And this is very typical. This is the kind of thing that you can expect to see not only on crime scenes, but in areas where occultists hang out. Like gang graffiti, occultists kind of communicate to each other through their graffiti.
Not long after this video came out, he was allegedly arrested for assault with a deadly weapon after he attacked his wife with a kitchen knife and was caught with copious amounts of cocaine, allegedly.
Well, there you go.
If he is the perfect example of who you should watch in regards to how to deal with the satanic threat, then he is also a great example as to why all of this is completely manufactured horseshit to sell newspapers and audio cassettes and video cassettes and make parents freak out over their troubled teens' interest in nerdy, weird bullshit, which nowadays isn't such a big deal. I suggest you watch it if it's on YouTube, by the way. It's great.
Look at these dumpsters. See, this is how they talk to each other. This here is a psilocybin mushroom. So probably they had a psilocybin ritual. So this was probably a psilocybin ritual. Okay, here you go. Shem Hemfarash. There's an N here for north, and there's an S over here for south. I'm assuming that this is where they actually had their ritual. Now, if I was a solo occult practitioner, I might do it in the bushes somewhere. You look on the ground, and you'll find clues as to what happened. This is a noose. There's blood on this noose. This could have been used either to bind someone up in some type of a ritual scourging, or it could have actually been used on an animal. Now, these are the kind of things that you'd be looking for. A medicine bottle of 2% xylocaine, known as lidocaine, for those of you with medical knowledge, you would know is a numbing. And of course, if you're going to ritually sacrifice an animal or a human for that matter in a public place, you don't want them to be screaming. Now, what's interesting here is the number 9. This is the way occultists tell each other, hey, we're Satanists and we're partying. Another thing that you'll find is usually there's chalk. This is used to draw a circle around the ritual area, and it's called a boundary between the worlds. Make various different magical symbols in those circles. Now, witches are known for their artwork.
Moving further still, there were several TV movies made about Satanism and the terrible addiction of occult traditions, such as Dungeons and Dragons. Perhaps the most well-known film features this guy named Tom Hanks in one of his first starring roles. It's called Monsters and Mazes, which sounds like the Asylum Films knockoff of the movie Dungeons and Dragons that your parents would accidentally rent on the new releases shelf at Blockbuster, if such a thing still existed. It's actually pretty hilarious.
I am Pardue, a holy man.
Pardue. Pardue. Next you must find the secret city under the earth.
And also, the movie Dungeons and Dragons isn't good either.
Now is your time to die.
The movie is based on a book by Rona Jaffe, which is I think that's how you say it, which is itself based on a bunch of misreported, basically fucking hoaxes, including college students playing Dungeons and Dragons in the steam tunnels of Michigan University. Somehow a few nerds mapping the tunnels as a part of their role-playing game, a guy trying to commit suicide by taking drugs and going there, and Gen Con being around the same time as those other events happening, created this insane story of kids playing Dungeons and Dragons in the steam tunnels, and they all go insane, and they go missing and start dying. That didn't really happen, but we have this book about it, and people use this fictional book as if it were a real-life account of what didn't really happen. What? The main guy this was all based off of is a real human being. His name was James Dallas Egbert III. James was a suicidal kid. He was really mixed up, and he tried to kill himself multiple times, possibly due for many reasons. Like pressure from parents, pressure from school, and maybe because he was gay? I don't really know. I only know what I read on Wikipedia. Anyway, this kid enjoyed D&D and sometimes likes LARPing with his nerd friends. When he tries to kill himself, he does so in those same steam tunnels I mentioned, and it doesn't work. He took some kind of sleep drug and it just wasn't a high enough dose, I think. He felt ashamed and then he hid out at a friend's house. Some people said that they thought they saw him at Gen Con, which happened to be around the same time. He would later try to kill himself again and would finally succeed about a year after this incident. The story became fictionalized, and then somehow many in the public decided to read the fiction as nonfiction and apply this totally made-up and not real link in a fictional book from D&D to real-life death in their own children.
You know that no Grant University student has ever committed suicide? What could I do? Gotta be the stuff that legends are made of. I know. The caverns. The mysterious forbidden Peakwood Caverns. Boy genius, suicides in caverns. Suicide is badass!
Along with the Tom Hanks movie and book, there was a whole movement against D&D and similar RPGs called Bothered About Dungeons and Dragons. That's right, everybody, it's an acronym. BADD. BADD. Seems like a group filled with a bunch of ASSs to me. It was started, God, that sucked. It was started by a woman named Patricia Pulling, whose son committed suicide in 1982. And for some reason, she believed D&D was the reason. And somehow the game possessed real magic, and it somehow cursed her son and made him kill himself, I think.
Pat and Lee Pulling and their 12-year-old daughter, Melissa. The Pullings came home one night 3 years ago and found Bink, their son, dead on the front lawn of their home in Montpelier, Virginia. He had shot himself through the heart with his father's handgun. Then they began looking through his things.
What we thought were just regular composition books with schoolwork in it, and much of the Dungeons and Dragons material, along with this curse he had received in the game that day that he died.
The curse that was placed on Bink's D&D character began, "Your soul is mine. I choose the time."
She tried suing his school and I think Gary Gygax, creator of Dungeons and Dragons or something, and a bunch of other shit, but all of her lawsuits failed because I feel like they would have to like legally define magic as a real thing in order for this to make any sense. I'm being a little flippant if you couldn't tell. She later co-authored a book and tons of anti-RPG game material using basically made-up statistics and terrible arguments in bad faith that made no sense. It's really sad that her child died, okay? But she used it to say and do all of these totally insane and flatly wrong things until she herself died in 1997 of lung cancer. And then BADD sort of ceased to exist, or at least ceased to be known. Another few characters in this 1980s occult panic party are Thomas Radeki. Just all names I can't say.
Thomas Radeki is a psychiatrist who teaches at the University of Illinois Medical School and who is chairman of the National Coalition on Television Violence. He has been studying the game for several years and says there are 28 deaths related to Dungeons and Dragons in the last 5 years.
Who was a psychiatrist famous for saying, quote, "The evidence in these cases is really quite impressive. There is no doubt in my mind that the game, Dungeons and Dragons, is causing young men to kill themselves and others."
We have invited to Larry King Live Dr. Thomas Radeki. He has participated in protests against comic books.
I think a family has to have a basic rule in the house that violence or explicit sexual material is not to be used as a means of entertainment. The research is really quite clear that will have a harmful effect on normal children.
Is not coincidence, not when you have careful documentation, you have careful notes, you have eyewitnesses. For instance, one case, the parents saw their child summon Dungeons and Dragons demons into his room before he killed himself.
I've noticed lots of sources mentioning through his organization, NCTV, he released a press release in 1985 citing letters from the investigative book by Rona Jaffe, Mazes and Monsters. There's a slight problem with that.
Robbie! Pardue! What are you doing?
This letter is actually from the very same fictional Mazes and Monsters, and not a real thing in real life, almost as if he can't tell the fucking difference.
Going to join the Great Hall. I am the maze controller. And I have absolute authority in this game. Game? Game.
JJ, what am I doing here?
He was a part of criminal investigations and served as some kind of expert witness in trials where perpetrators blamed D&D somehow for their crimes. He lost his medical license multiple times and was finally arrested for trading opiate prescriptions for sex with his patients, allegedly. So yeah, again, real winner, real honest person.
When people speak to you over the phone and speak to you and you introduce yourself as Dr. Radeki, do you think they have the right to know that you've lost your license?
I think they certainly I would tell people that if they asked.
Totally not full of shit and living in a fantasy world. Ironic. Patricia Pulling has a lot of appearances in the media, sometimes about Kurt's case itself. And she with Radeki were quite the pair when it came to making infamously inflammatory claims. As a final note on them, I will read from a 1991 skeptical book about so-called, quote, cult cops, like the ones we saw in the law enforcement video earlier. It's called In Pursuit of Satan, the Police and the Occult. I'll read a bit of it here to sort of close out the thread on all this. So from the 1991 book. Pulling maintains that her son took his own life because of a curse placed on him at school by an English teacher where he played D&D. The point I am making, Pulling argues, is that the, big parentheses, dungeon master, has such an omnipotent role in this game, a role I believe can lead to tragedy, as with our own son. Pulling organized Bad to campaign to have the game removed from public schools where D&D clubs sometimes flourish. Pulling receives much bolstering by psychiatrist Thomas Radeki of Illinois, chairman of the National Coalition on Television Violence, NCTV. Radeki has proclaimed, quote, "The game is full of human sacrifice, eating babies, drinking blood, rape, murder of every variety, curses of insanity." In 1985, Radeki released a statement that listed D&D related deaths, citing the book Mazes and Monsters by Rona Jaffe. We talked about this earlier, which states how a fantasy role-playing game took over the lives of college students. But Jaffe's book, as we've discussed, sets up an imaginary college in an imaginary town in Pennsylvania. The fact that it is fiction did not stop Radeki from citing it as a, quote, investigative book for NCTV purposes. Perhaps the most remarkable phenomenon is Pulling's extraordinary influence on the police, with whom she has an almost symbiotic relationship. Pulling provides the cult cops with misinformation and then makes claims at her seminars based on her access to confidential information provided by cult cops conducting criminal investigations. Her packed audiences have reinforced her newfound identity as private investigator, leading her into odd excursions to Matamoros, for example, or to the prison cell of mass murderer and inveterate liar Henry Lee Lucas. The most disturbing fact about Pulling is her assumption of professional roles for which she is unqualified. She has no clinical background, though parents sometimes haul their misbehaving children before her for an analysis of their satanic proclivities. She recently represented herself at a Virginia cult seminar as being, quote, a private investigator with the state of Virginia, noting that she had received, quote, innumerable degrees and awards. Her, quote, innumerable degrees consist of a 2-year Associate of Arts degree from J. Sargent Reynolds Community College in Richmond, Virginia. The private investigator business implies some association with state government. In truth, she holds a state private investigator's license. To obtain this document, one need complete only 42 hours of classroom instruction, with an additional 6, which Pulling has, if one wants to carry a gun. Then, one must pass a 1-hour exam and a criminal background check and pay for the license. In fact, Pulling became a licensed private investigator on October 6, 1987, according to the Virginia Department of Commerce. Yet in a radio broadcast on KFYI in Phoenix, Arizona, in October of 1987, she described herself as having been a private investigator for the past 6 years, a time span that would have preceded Bink Pulling's death. Bink Pulling is her son. So, what do we think about all of these people going on television and talking about the dangers of D&D and writing these terrifying books and citing all of these stories that may or may not have anything to do with Dungeons and Dragons or the occult or Satanism? I kind of think they're dicks. So why did I just take all that time to talk about all this shit and not give updates on the story at hand? Because there are no story updates at hand. It was likely something, even if it was an assault or a murder or a robbery gone bad, not related to Satanism, the occult, and certainly not D&D. This story seems to be the product of a time when anything fantasy-related was met with a sort of Christian public hysteria. It actually reminds me of being a kid when Harry Potter came out. I'm like in my early 30s, so lots of Christian parents would buy all these books from the local shops and burn them or do some other crazy public demonstrations about how the books made children practice real witchcraft.
What's the harm? Well, the harm is, first of all, that witchcraft is being normalized to our children. For the first time in the history of the world, witchcraft is being given to children in a children's format.
Getting way sidetracked here. All right, TLDR. The occult was blamed pretty frequently for disappearances, murders, accidental deaths, suicides, a lot in the late 70s into the mid-90s. Children's behavior is always blamed on the newest scary thing, whether it's comic books, movies, Satan, heavy metal, video games, or TikTok. Well, that one may be real, but my overall point is valid. The public was influenced by the media, TV, movies, and certain groups pushing their own weird, overzealous anti-occult agendas to whip everyone up in this frenzy. I don't want people to feel like I'm standing up for the occult or standing up for cults. It's just, this, I believe, is why Kurt's death is interwoven with his fantasy life in this way, the way the story is told, when in reality it's plausible it had nothing to do with it at all. That's my opinion. But as the show points out,
result: Unsolved. Story 4: Lost Loves. Can you tell I recorded this later after I lost my sore throat?
World War II. V-mail. A military mail service is the only way overseas soldiers can have constant contact with their loved ones. Because many died in this war, Unsolved Mysteries asserts the, quote, last letter home becomes the most precious of keepsakes, a memory of lost love, as said by Stack. February 4th, 1986. Raleigh, North Carolina. Mike Minguez is spraying for pests in Aunt Harriet's house. He spots an old military-looking duffel bag with letters pouring out of it. It had several hundred envelopes inside. All of them are from U.S. soldiers. The letters were inscribed on the outside, V-mail. Apparently, Aunt Harriet's nephew was a crewman on the ship SS Caleb Strong, and 235 soldiers sent letters with this nephew when he went on leave on their way to North Africa in May of 1944. The nephew was supposed to mail all these goddamn things when he got back to the U.S. while everyone else is going to Africa, but Robert Stack says he had, quote, forgotten. How the fuck does that happen? It's a big-ass fucking bag. The nephew died in 1980, and Auntie was embarrassed to alert anyone of what happened, so the bag went into the attic. Minguez only got the letters and the story after promising to the lady to never reveal her identity of being Aunt Harriet from the Batman TV show, and he left with the bag and all the letters in his possession. All letters were turned in to Meg Harris at USPS. They sorted all the letters and figured 235 letters were written by 92 different soldiers addressed to over 150 different people back home. USPS painstakingly contacted and delivered the mail to or from 89 of the 92 soldiers or their families. 3 could not be found. Numbers. B. Arthur's younger sister reads a heartfelt letter from her husband he wrote aboard the ship in 1944.
Oh, God.
I was shocked. It tore me all to pieces. And it was just as though we were there together, and just as though he was talking with me.
She is actually named Merrill Page Rapley. Her husband, Frank, was a gunner aboard an aircraft that was shot down. She remained an unmarried widow for 44 years as of the taping. So maybe that joke about being B. Arthur's sister was a little uncalled for. Then again, B. Arthur is amazing, and I'll thank you for being a friend. The letter shocked her, and it sent her back in time and gave her that one last connection to her husband. Peggy Grubbs reads a letter from her husband, Sumter Grubbs. Everyone cries.
Your ever-loving and faithful husband. Those were Staff Sergeant Sumter Grubbs' last words to his wife, Peggy.
Oh, God.
Written on May 19th, 1944.
Comedy podcast.
She finally got to get her husband's final correspondence. Heartbreaking and warming at the same time. Now I'm uncomfortable. Update.
Well, that story ended fucking abruptly.
We won the war! Woo! USA! USA! Nothing bad happened. Unsolved Mystery says 2 of the 3 unfound letters, or their families, were found, and these letters were delivered. Only 1 letter remains. All this from the company that utterly devastated my last package from home. My family's tried sending me a box of Cheez-Its, and what arrived was like cheese knots. It was pulverized to fuck. Extra details after the show. V-mail. This show pretty much figured out the mystery all on its own. It was a very short clip. Unsurprisingly, it didn't need a 30-something non-journalist's help. But let's take a look back at V-mail, what it was, how it worked, and whatnot. What did I write? And whatnot. The one sort of weird thing about this show is that the V-mail shown isn't quite how the system was supposed to work. The show says the mysterious nephew military guy took a duffel bag directly from the ship where he was stationed of letters soldiers packed into his bag, and he promised to mail them when he got home. That kind of confused me because things like people losing bags full of mail or just not mailing them could happen, so I had to look up how the V-mail system was supposed to work again. I had heard references of V-mail many times because I've seen a lot of World War II movies, and I used to be one of those weird people obsessed with the war and all the weird details about what went on and all that stuff. It's a big retread, but let's try to remember the basics of V-mail. V stands for victory. The mail service was started in 1942, and the bags of V-mail and the advertising frequently had a big V on it, or sometimes 3 dots and a dash, which is Morse code for the letter V. V-mail was actually more complex than just writing letters on plain paper and putting them in envelopes and stuffing those in a big sack and then giving a guy carrying that shit home and mailing it himself. V-mail was actually a specific piece of paper issued by the Postal Service that had one side that soldiers wrote on, and then it kind of folded up into its own envelope, with a spot on the other side to write the address, date, and other info. So it was like a specific piece of mailing material that had to be given to the soldiers. Because of size and space limitations on the boats, the soldiers would actually submit these V-mail forms, which were accepted, and then they were photographed and developed onto rolls of film. They were then packed and mailed to the postal center. The microfilm was printed out on sheets of paper, which were 4 1/4 by 5 inches, quarter the size of the original. And then they put the print copies in new envelopes, and then those prints were the ones that were mailed to the final destinations. So they were not original handwritten letters. They were like mini-size copies. Wikipedia says it basically compressed 378 regular mail bags into 1 microfilm mail bag. Sources also state that your average soldier wrote about 6 letters per week, so this compression of space was unbelievably significant. Another major pro of the V-mail system is that censorship was easy. Many soldiers of the day would like to tell their loved ones where they were and where they were about to go. But that isn't so awesome to share your information when you're trying to hide your position from the enemy and not die. So the censors would always have to black out those portions of handwritten letters. But with the V-mail system, where the letters were actually photographed onto 16mm film stock, all they had to do was take a penknife and cut the sections of the incriminating material out and then dispose of the pieces. Then photograph the letter, the paper, on a black background. This made it fast and sure that no information would be accidentally passed on to the Axis powers. Unfortunately, according to literally every source on Vmail on the internet, this also made it impossible for your honey to spray her letter with her perfume, or give you a big lipstick kiss, because smells can't be photographed, and lipstick damaged the duplication machines. It was probably also very difficult to send pictures of your dick. The U.S. Department of War even made a little animated film produced by Warner Brothers about this, fully voiced by Bugs Bunny himself, Mr. Mel Blanc, starring the character Private Snafu. Where he writes a letter while jerking off under the covers to his girlfriend who sent him some titty pictures, and she reads the letters that he sent to her mother on the phone when she's got her titties out. I think they inserted titties into everything to keep the GIs interested, but basically he's an animated character that shows what not to do in World War II. And then what he should have done, I don't know, man, titties. To animate titties before animate titties. And this was made by the government and Bugs Bunny. Watch what you write, it says. God, Fallout 3 was right on with all this weird cultural propaganda shit. My nose is bleeding. Private Snafu was utilized for lots of propaganda videos made especially for the GIs, and occasionally was involved in some pretty racist shit. Holy fuck. Imagine living in Japan and watching through all these, by the way. It feels even weirder. So, how did this guy end up with a big bag of Vmail letters? I'm honestly not sure. They were definitely Vmail stationery. But the show says the soldier guy packed them into a laundry bag and says that they were handwritten. If you look at the footage of the widows reading the letters, they are reading from large sheets of original Vmail papers that were given to soldiers, not the reproduced versions sent back home after military processing. I think either the crewmen were unable to send the letters to the processing center for some reason, the processing centers had stopped the Vmail service by this time, although most sources say it ended in 1945, or simply the soldiers wanted their letters sent back home as fast as possible. The weird thing is they let a soldier carry a laundry sack full of letters off the boat and hand-deliver the mail, even though it didn't pass through a military censor. And even further still, the Vmail system was fast and very reliable. It literally processed billions of pieces of mail in about 3 years. Why exactly was it done like this? No one can say. A lot of these people are gone now. It's likely, though, that in the midst of wartime, there are often supply issues. The soldiers probably had all the letters ready to go, but thought it might be safe to be sent back with a man who was returning home who could directly get the mail to their loved ones instead of waiting to pass it off to another military vessel or wait until they docked again. Ironically, of course, the letters were over 40 years late because of this. Why were they never delivered by secret military nephew guy? Well, he could have realized that taking the letters directly from the boat to the post office may get him in trouble. I'm honestly not sure about that. He could have had to pay for over 100 letters postage, although if soldiers wrote the word free where the postage went and their ID numbers, they didn't have to pay, or maybe they were misplaced shortly after the man arrived back home. It's all speculation, as he died in 1980. The only person who knew about it was an elderly woman in 1987, and his identity was kept a secret. The only real takeaway from the story is, deliver the mail? No, that's stupid. Write to those you love, so they have a reminder of you that they can hold on to and connect to, because life is short. Something like that.
Result. Solved.
Only one letter remains unsent. Any other details of the case are lost. Stack summarizes in the woods. Okay, Jesus fuck, we're done. Alright, holy fuck. Where's all that fogging coming from? Where is he always where the purple fog is?
Knows the truth. Perhaps it's you.
No. I'm asking where the purple fog is. The pink purple fog. You know what I'm saying, bro? How do I... God damn it, I can't... Fuck! Finally finished over 1 fucking year later. What a goddamn slog. Whoa, you know, I actually planned and recorded the drunk part of this podcast in November of 2018. What the fuck? Ironically, after all my belly aching apologia about episode lateness, this is the worst one ever. At least it's finally finished and I can stop worrying about Satan and blue Chevy Camaros for a little while. Although, I got a weird nosebleed while I was recording this, so that's something new I can worry about. What the fuck? Actually, the laptop I used to write this episode was damaged when I took all my gear for a video shoot and crammed everything in my bag like an idiot. And almost this entire episode was handwritten on a legal pad, riding the train to and from work, listening to my Sony cassette Walkman because my phone battery is also messed up. My computer monitor also died. Please donate to my Patreon. Anyway, I look for the podcast on iTunes, eventually catch a cassette edition or 2 on Patreon. Just donate $1 to get your name in the credits if you want, or continue to watch it on YouTube, or listening on the CastBox podcast app for Apple and Android. And they have a website player too, CastBox, that's what I use. I hope you enjoyed this ghostless but not boobless episode where I certainly have made enemies out of all human pork people hybrids, people who love the second generation Camaro, and cops who wear cross-draw holsters. Thank you for listening. Be safe. Be kind. Watch the movie Sleepaway Camp and take a drink every time Ricky swears. It'll be fun. Get your favorite green t-shirt and put peanut butter on your dog's gums. And together, we can solve a mystery. Thank you for listening.
Footage and audio from the television show Unsolved Mysteries is used under fair use. This show is not affiliated with the television show, and the footage and audio is used under a fair use without permission. Please support the Unsolved Mysteries by watching it from official licensed sources such as Hulu or Amazon Prime. Unsolved Mysteries is by NBC, CBS, Spike, Lifetime, and currently distributed by Film Rise. We miss you, Robert Stack and Dennis Farina. Music by 3 Chain Links from the album Phantoms used under Creative Commons Attribution License. Please see companion text for full license and link. Please visit 3 Chain Links on SoundCloud. If this is 3 Chain Links, please answer my fan mail. Goodbye.